أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بفضل الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله والحمد حقه كما يستحقه حمدا كثيرا. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. اللهم لعن أول ظالم ظلم حق محمد وآل محمد وآخر تابع له على ذلك. اللهم لعن العصابة التي جاهدت الحسين وشايعت وبايعت وتابعت على قتله. اللهم لعنهم جميعا. ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلق الله أجمعين محمد. وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Tonight is a night where we commemorate the martyrdom of the master of the monotheists and the commander of the faithful and the first successor of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, Al-Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi afdal salatu wassalam. So we send our condolences to our master Al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan on this occasion and ask Allah to grant us the opportunity to visit the shrine of our master Amir al-Mu'mineen and to grant us his intercession on the Day of Judgment. ببركة الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. The story of the commander of the faithful's martyrdom begins before the actual event. It is an event that was spoken of before it took place. The first time that this event was mentioned in the narrations was at the time of Khandaq, the time of the battle of the parties or the battle of the Ahzab, when Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam returned after he had done with and finished off Amr ibn Wudd al-Ameli and sent him off to the fire of hell. When he returned, his head was struck and it was bleeding. So he came to Rasulullah, and Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam came close to where the mark was where he had been struck, and he tied up his head to reduce the bleeding. And then he said to him, "Where will I be?" And he pointed towards the beard of Amir al-Mu'mineen. He said, "When this will be stained from the blood of that." And he points to the head of Amir al-Mu'mineen. So indicating to him the first time that the way that he will be martyred is in this manner, in the same place that he has been struck. The second time the narrations recall is during this month, just before the month of Shahr Ramadan. And this is before you were talking about, to put you on the scale, you were talking at around the time of 630 AD, and the Imam, as you know, was martyred at around 671 AD. So this is 40 years before this. The Imam is still a youth. Remember, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam is not, he's not a clairvoyant. He's not someone that predicts the future. He's someone that speaks with certainty, and when he says something is to happen, it is as he says it will happen. And he says to the commander of the faithful on that night, where he's giving the final sermon in the month of Sha'ban to prepare everyone for the holy month of Ramadan, he mentions the sermon that you hear, and then Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam rises and he asks him a question. And he says, Ya Rasulullah, Ma afdalul a'mal fi hada shahr. What is the best of deeds in the month of Ramadan? So Rasulullah replies, he says, Ya Abul Hasan. He says the best, my patience has been tested, but anyway, I'll see how I go. He says the best of deeds is to abstain from committing any of the great sins, committing the sins in this holy month. He says this is, it's always the same culprit, subhanallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So anyway, he says that the best deed in Shahr Ramadan is to abstain from committing the major sins. So then Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam begins to weep. And when he weeps, the Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam asks him, he says, what is it that has made you weep, Ya Rasulullah? And then he explains to him what will happen to him in this month. He says that he weeps over what will take place to the Imam in this month. So first time he's told him how he will die, and the second time he mentions the time that he will die. That even though the Quran speaks of that no one knows their time of death, some people were told how they would die, as Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam spoke of the martyrdom of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam, and as he spoke of the martyrdom of Ammar ibn Yasir. So Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he speaks of the martyrdom of Amir al-Mu'mineen. And then he goes on to say in that sermon, he says, Ya Ali, he says, Man qatalaka faqad qatalani. That whoever kills you, it is as though they have killed me. Remember last night we mentioned that he is nafs Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That anything that happens against Amir al-Mu'mineen, it is as if though it has happened against Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So twice he has spoken to him of the event taking place. Now let's look at the enmity and how it built up. Because this conspiracy had its short-term causes and it had its long-term causes. See, the Khawarij, they were a part of the army of the commander of the faithful. They were a part of the army and they fought alongside him. In the battle of Siffin, when the commander of the faithful's army, Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullahi wassalamu alayhi's army, was overpowering Muawiyah's army, and they were about to defeat them, Muawiyah came with the plan of placing the book of God, or things that looked like the book of God, on the top of spears, and to hold out these spears and say, let the book of God judge between us. In other words, to throw the people off what was really taking place. Even though the commander of the faithful, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, said to them, I am the animated book of God. Continue fighting. And then the Khawarij, who were in the army, they were the ones that broke up the army, said, we can't do this. This is the book of God. we have to stop fighting. They look for an excuse to get away from their obligation. They look for an excuse so they can avoid continuing. There's no point in all this. See, some people fought with the Imam, on the side of the Imam, with aqeedah, with conviction. If you look at in the Quran, when it speaks about the companions of Badr, and then it compares them to the companions of Uhud. In the Quran, when it speaks of the companions of Badr, it says if there is 100 patient ones, and about the people of Badr, that they would beat, if there was 100 patient ones, that they would beat 2,000 enemy soldiers. Why? Because there's purity amongst the ranks. The first battle, those that went to fight were pure. In the second battle of Uhud, it said if there was 100 patient ones, they'll beat 200. It doesn't go towards 2,000 because there was contamination now. You know, there's a bit of the people that, you know, the people that joined the ranks when everything, you know, at the start of a war, there's only a few in the resistance. When the resistance begins, only the khullas, the ones that stand up, the ones that give their blood, and then there's the ones that just join to collect the booty, the ones that join just to collect whatever comes from the battle, to get all the spoils of war. These are the ones that don't have that same purity. They are different to the mujahid. And history repeats itself even today. You look at the ones that begin in a resistance, and you look at the ones that join the resistance later, and look to see what they can gain from it. So from the very beginning, the people of Badr, they were pure. But the people of Uhud, there was some contamination in the ranks. Now by the time it got to the Battle of Siffin, there were people that were actually fighting by the side of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, who fought by his side like they would have fought by any Khalif. I'll fight by his side like I'll fight by the side of even Al-Hajjaj, or sorry, Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, who was at the time. I fight by his side like I would fight by the side of Harun. I'd fight by his side like I'd fight by the side of Yazid. This was their intention. As long as he's the Khalif, we stand by the Khalif. You know, like once I was outside Masjid al-Haram, and some of the boys wanted to take a photo, and the man came up and said, look, you can't take photographs. Sometimes you let it go, you say okay, well, but sometimes you say, alright, I'm just going to push this guy's buttons a bit, see how far this can go. So why can't I take a photograph? He says, because it's haram. I go, if you claim something to be haram, Shara, you need evidence, you need dalil for this. He says, I am a abd ma'mur, I'm a slave that's commanded. I said, then who has given you the amr? He said, the wali al-amr, the king, the one that is entrusted with the command. This is how these people viewed Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. They looked at him as the people today in these states look at their king in the same manner as they view this king, regardless of what he does, as long as he says the shahadatain, that they follow him. This is how the people that followed Amir al-Mu'mineen of the army, not all of them, of the army, like the Khawarij, viewed him as that. He was just a person entrusted with this command. So then they said, stop the fight. His army had come apart, just as the time of Imam Hassan alayhi salam later, when his army fell apart, you pull out. What do? You're not going to leave a slaughter of the Muslims. It's not the way it works. So they pulled out, and then they came up to the commander of the faithful, and they said, why did you pull out of the war? Them, the Khawarij. And he said, you are the ones that split the ranks. They said to him, astaghfirullah. You know, ask God for repentance. Amir al-Mu'mineen is the type of person, when you mention something, you know, sometimes when someone says to you, Allah yahdik, some people take offense to that. Someone's doing dua for you. May Allah guide you, inshallah. That is a good thing. So when they said to Amir al-Mu'mineen, astaghfirullah, Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen said, astaghfirullah rabbi wa atubu ilayh. They asked him to remember God, and he did. They said, see, you in the wrong. The evidence of this is you said astaghfirullah. So then they worked against him and they began the next battle during his rule, which was the battle of Nahrawan. And in Nahrawan, Amir al-Mu'mineen, because when a battle takes place, don't forget, the Muslims, even if you look at the way the Shia in the world function today, when it comes to the battles, they don't go to war immediately. They go when the war is becoming incumbent. There's no other way out. This is taban what you learn from Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. When the war has come upon you and you have no exit, then you go to war. You've never looked at the history of the Shia. Have a look at the Shia. They never actually went into a country and invaded it. Always the wars were defensive wars. As in this case, Amir al-Mu'mineen avoided the battle of Jamal as much as he could until it was incumbent and mandatory on him to fight. He avoided the battle of Siffin until he had to. And same with Nahrawan, but in Nahrawan it came at a great cost to the Khawarij. A lot of them were killed. They were killed in such a manner that their numbers had depleted, but then once again they regathered and they began their chants. They would enter the mosque, Masjid al-Kufa, where Amir al-Mu'mineen would lead the prayers, and they would make their chants, Al-Hukmu Lillah, La Laka Ya Ali, that Allah Azza wa Jal is the one that should be ruling, not you. Which is ridiculous, because there is got to be a representative of God on earth, because this is what God has put. Otherwise we would have all been born with a Quran in our hand. Everyone would have come out the womb looking like the Statue of Liberty, book in their hand and they're out. It's not the way it was. There was a prophet to come out and give everyone their books, a representative of God to teach us our ways. Now, Amir al-Mu'mineen had told his nearest companions that this is the man, even when he had his allegiance given to him. Allegiance was given, and he made Rahman ibn Muljam 3 times swear that he would not break the bay'ah. When we say bay'ah, you hear this term, a lot of times people hear bay'ah. Why did Imam Hussein not give bay'ah? Bay'ah basically is when you give someone allegiance and authority over you. It's where you place your hand beneath their hand, that their hand's above yours, and you say, you have authority over me, that you are now my leader. So when Rahman gave allegiance to the commander of the faithful, the commander of the faithful made him promise that he would not break this vow that he's given, and that he would not act with any betrayal, that he would not betray. That when you deal with someone treacherously, when you deal with someone in a way where you stab them in the back, as they say, Rasulullah says about these people, وَلِكُلِّ غَادِرٍ لِوَاءٌ يُعْرَفْ بِهِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ, that on the day of judgment, anyone that ghadar, anyone that collaborated with the enemy, anyone that worked against the believers, anyone that attacks a believer in this manner, in a treacherous or using betrayal, on the day of judgment they will be known. There will be a standard that they stand behind it. These are the people that betrayed. They will be known by this. So he said that you will not break this vow, this allegiance you have given, and you will not betray 3 times. And then Rahman says, you have done something with me you have not done with anyone else. In other words, he's trying to say, alarm bells are ringing. Beware of what you're going to do. So then the companions said, why don't you kill him if you know this is the man that's going to kill you? He's the one that's going to kill you. Why don't you kill him? And you know, living in this in the Western world, in this country, and that, we can be charged with intent. You know, if you commit an action, if you have the intent to commit a crime, you can be charged with it. In Islam, we don't have intent. In Islam, you committed the crime or you didn't commit the crime. If you didn't commit the crime, that's God giving you a chance to straighten up. But in the case here, they said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, kill him before he kills you. And he says to them that the Prophet says, it is not permissible for you to punish before someone has committed the crime. This is only sensible and logical. You don't punish someone. And if you were to kill him, then someone else will kill Amir al-Mu'mineen. In the end, it's meant to be for him to kill him. This is what he's meant to be. Not, I don't want people to start thinking that he's been forced in this action. This is in God's wisdom and knowledge, knowing in which direction that this person is headed. Even the Messenger of God, when he speaks about them, he speaks about this person to be of the most wicked of the Akharin. Abdurrahman al-Muljam, he says he's the most wicked of the Akharin. That this person has committed, because you could imagine this person betrayed the commander of the faithful. Even at the point after he has struck him, the Imam says to him, was I such a bad Imam to you? Was I that bad to you that you had to do this? You know, what have I done, in other words, so you can do this? Even those that fought the Imam, Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam, on the 10th of Muharram, there were many scenes where you read, and historians say that they were weeping. A scene takes place with the infant, they're weeping. There's a scene where Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam, as she's been taken away, starts to speak to the body of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and the people start weeping of the enemy. They weep because they realize there's something wrong, but their love for this world is what keeps them firm on the path that they are going. How often, let's not go too far. Let's not go too far. How often do you see someone being told about the Akhirah and being told about religion? There are people, honestly, after a majlis, they're finished and they go hook up somewhere on the beaches or whatever to see what splendors walking through the streets. After a majlis, there are people that do that. You think it's as if they weren't even present. It's as if they weren't being told what is taking place. They forget everything they've heard and they go back to their normal lives. A bit like a book. It's a nice book to read. It's called The Mask of the Red Death. It's only a kutayib. It's a very small story by Edgar Allan Poe. The Mask of the Red Death speaks about an epidemic that goes through and starts killing people, a scourge, a pandemic, like a virus that goes through and starts to kill people. And every time the clock strikes, someone dies and the people freeze. And then a moments later they go back to their merrymaking. It's a bit like our life. You read this, a very nice story. It shows you how this is how people get affected. They hear something about death, moments later they're back to their normal life. So these people heard these sermons. These people understood this. Imam Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam on the day of Ashura spoke to the enemy numerous amounts of time. And yet they continued in their strive against him. As is the case of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. So this is the background to speak about the long-term causes that brought about his martyrdom. Now let's take a look at the short-term causes. The short-term causes was one night the Khawarij had a meeting with three men that would come to a conclusion where each one of them would end their problems. They said all our problems have come from three men. See, you know how someone, for example, I hear this all the time, where they equate someone with another person. Like they say, oh, these three or these four are tyrants. And you say, hold on, you know, this guy's bad, but he's not Saddam. You know, sometimes they try and equate them, and they're not the same. You can't put them all in the same way. Even like when people mention the ruling party in Syria right now, they say he's a tyrant. Yes, he's a tyrant, but he's the lesser of the two evils when you compare him with what's going to take power. You can't compare them. They're not the same. They're different. You know, one is indiscriminate in the way that they kill. As we mentioned, they're indiscriminate. They kill anything and everything. And one kills anyone that stands against their party. So at least, you know, there's a chance with one and not with the other. You can't put them all together. But now we're not talking about this. We're talking about purity up against impurity. In this case, it's even worse. There is someone that Rasulullah says he's with the truth and the truth is with him, that he is with the Quran and the Quran is with him, and he even warns his companions when he says, "Oh Ammar," he says, if you see the truth on one side and you see Ali on one side, he says, go with Ali. Sorry, he says, if you see the people on one side and you see Ali on one side, go with Ali, because Aliyun ma'al haqq wal haqqu ma'ali. Then he says, furthermore, he says, even if you see the truth on one side and you see Amir al-Mu'minin on the other, he says, go with Ali, because the haqq follows Ali. Not Ali follows the haqq. The haqq follows where he goes. So you have someone that the Messenger of God speaks explicitly about. There's no drawing back. He doesn't say, well, you know, Ali is a good man. He says, Ali is like myself. The Quran bisarrah, the Quran speaks like this vividly. There's no ambiguity when the Quran says that they are nafsun wahid, that they are one and the same in terms of you dealing with them and obeying them. They are one and the same. You cannot differentiate with their command. Even with the other prophets, where Allah Azza wa Jal, there are levels. He says one prophet is like this, another prophet's like that, and then he says لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله, that when it comes to the obedience of the prophets and listening to what the prophets say, you must obey all of them equally. You cannot say, I'll obey this one, I won't obey that. You must obey all of them. But this is when it comes to obeying Amir al-Mu'minin. So on this night they conspire. One says, I will kill Muawiyah. They are all equally bad. Doesn't matter who they chose to kill. But because they conspired on a night to kill Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. One chose to kill Amr ibn al-As, and Abd al-Rahman ibn Muljim chose to kill Ali ibn Abi Talib. And they agreed that this thing will take place on the 19th day of Shahr Ramadan. Will be the morning of the 19th. It was actually planned that they will kill them in the morning, because each one leads prayers wherever they are, and you kill them then. And it was planned a long time before. So what happened? Abdul Rahman was still wanting to kill. There was no point where he didn't want to kill Imam Ali alayhi salam, but he kept it to himself. It wasn't something that he would tell anyone, until he saw a woman by the name of Qatam that he wanted. And this woman was obviously not a woman of chastity. She was obviously, you can imagine when someone tells you this person, his father is so-and-so and his brother is so-and-so, and it's as a family, it's a cesspool. The chances, you know, like when they mention Yazid ibn Muawiyah, they say his father's Muawiyah. His grandfather's Abu Sufyan. His grandmother is the liver eater, Hind. So you sit there and you go, wow, what is the fruit from these trees? There is a possibility, by chance, that the fruit may be good. But generally the fruit will be bad. So she's from a family, her brother and her father both fought against Amir al-Mu'minin Nahrawan, and were killed. So she has hatred and enmity towards Amir al-Mu'minin. Now Abdul Rahman takes a liking to her. She gives herself up to him for money, for a servant, and the final payment she wants to Allahumma salli ala. While you're standing up, could you please move forward? So, because as much as you can move forward, because there are more people coming. Assalamu alaikum. So with this, she is the one that assists him in his case to enact this murder, to enact this assassination. Because she finds out after she gets to know him, because when they meet, her final request, sorry, we got cut off, I didn't remember. Final request is she wants the head as a payment, or as a dowry. She wants the head of the commander of the faithful. Now this isn't something that hasn't been asked before. This was the case of Herod the Great, when not so great, but when Herod the Great wanted to marry his niece. The dowry she asked for was the head of John the Baptist, or Yahya ibn Zakaria. That was the dowry she wanted, and that's what he gave her, the head of Yahya ibn Zakaria. So it's something that has been asked before. In the case of the commander of the faithful, his head was the dowry for this marriage. This is what was to be chosen as the dowry for this marriage. So from this point, she assisted him. She brought people to help him prepare for this killing. Now on the night of the 19th, the Imam generally throughout the month would be invited to one of his children's houses for iftar. But his iftar wasn't like what we eat for iftar. His iftar was very simple and very basic, detached from anything within this world. That when the narration says that when he came to sit for the iftar, there were 3 types of food. When you say 3 types, people may think, what was there, rice and chicken and what? No, 3 types of food. There was barley bread. Barley bread's not like any other bread. It's rough. It's not something that's nice and tender. It's not like the bread you get. It's not those loaves that you get that are nice and soft within. No, it's a rough type of bread. And also the salt was a rough type of salt. It wasn't that blended salt that you have. And there was some yogurt. And the Imam said, I don't want 3 types of food on the table. He says to his daughter, that lift one of the types of food. So she says, I went to take the salt. He said no. She knew he didn't want the salt to be removed. He wanted the one that was dearest, the nearest one to your heart right now, you think is the yogurt. And that's the one she removed, and he said that's good. And she says he ate 3 pieces of the bread. This is what he ate. And then he was finished, satisfied, satiated at this point. And he spent the night in worship. He spent the night in worship until he went for a small moment where he slept. In that moment that he slept in, he saw a dream. He saw the messenger of God sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, and the messenger of God called him and said, we await you. That you think about it, there was a close link between the messenger of God. This was his brother. He was the dearest person there was to him. And Amir al-Mu'mineen. And after Rasulullah went into God's mercy, after he was martyred, and after Fatima al-Zahra salawatullah alayha was also martyred, Amir al-Mu'mineen was left with no one. He had his sons, but he had no one that he had this bond that he had with the aforementioned. And the same, we look at the story of Nabi Isa alayhi salam, in this case, that when Yahya ibn Zakaria was martyred, he used to weep because he had lost someone that he was attached with, as the case was with Musa alayhi salam when Harun passed into God's mercy. He wept because he lost the attachment that he had. So Amir al-Mu'mineen was yearning to return to be with Rasulullah and with Fatima al-Zahra alayhim afdal salatu wassalam. So anyway, he saw this dream, and then he told them, this is the night that I have been promised. So upon this night, when he is leaving to go towards the masjid, when he leaves the house, his son Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam wants to go with him. And Amir al-Mu'mineen says, by my right over you, I swear upon you that you stay at home, that I leave by myself, so that no one can come with me for this point. As he leaves towards the mosque, many elements try to prevent him, because it's a day that, you remember, this is not a normal person on his way to the house of God. This is not a normal person on his way towards his death. You are talking about someone who is the brother of Rasulullah, the successor of Rasulullah, The one who Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam says is like myself. The one who the Quran says like the self of Rasulullah. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, when he used to walk, you look at the narrations, you read the narrations, then when he used to walk through the streets, the trees would lean towards him. They would lean towards him. Things would prostrate in his direction because of who he was. So Amir al-Mu'mineen is off towards even not only his son, who is the greatest creation after the three that I mentioned, Rasulullah, Fatima, Zahra, and Amir al-Mu'mineen, would prevent him, but even the animals. If you get to the point where the geese would make noise and shriek because they do not want the Imam to move in this direction, everything is in the worst of condition. Even the inanimate objects like the door would prevent the Imam in this direction, because he's off towards, not because the Imam's going to return to his Creator, he's going to achieve martyrdom. It's our loss. It was the loss of the believers at that time. It wasn't the loss of Amir al-Mu'mineen. This was his gain. This is what he yearned for. This is what he was waiting for. You need to remember, I don't want to make this into a maqtal. Still there is a maqtal, and I want that to be the centerpiece where you actually weep. But just to let you know that the Imam was going towards what he wanted. Remember, this is a man whose last words in the dunya was وَلِمِثْلِ هَذَا فَلْيَعْمَلِ الْعَامِلُونَ, that this was someone whose last words when he spoke were what we wish to say, what we want to say, that this is what you're supposed to do for the hereafter. Someone that was ready to meet his Lord. Someone that I mentioned in the first couple of nights that says, I am more familiar with death than a child is with his mother's bosom. That he's more familiar with death. This is how ready he is for passing into God's mercy. From this, the Imam goes towards his death. This is the way we need to look at a life like this. We need to reflect, how do I walk towards my end? Right now, yourselves, this is the night of forgiveness. This is a night where you turn to God. I ask you all on this night to forgive everyone that's harmed you of the believers. Everyone you know, forgive them. Allah Azza wa Jal forgives those that forgive. On this night, forgive everyone that has harmed you of the believers. And ask Allah Azza wa Jal to place mercy in the hearts of those you have harmed to forgive you. These are the nights where you're supposed to turn around. After this month will pass. What have I achieved? Am I ready to face my death? In this night is a night to get forgiveness, because only the wicked, listen to this, no one here is wicked. Honestly, you wouldn't be here attending the night of remembrance of the martyrdom of Amir al-Mu'mineen if you're wicked. Only the wicked, believe this, will not attain the mercy of God in this month, let alone this night. Forget the month compared to this night. This is the night where you remember the martyrdom of Amir al-Mu'mineen. This is the night where you sit and mourn, and for every teardrop that you have over this Imam, this is a mercy from God, that even a single teardrop, if you cry, if you can't cry, try to cry. A single teardrop will gain you the mercy that you will dream of on the Day of Judgment. That when you die, the Imam says that his forefathers will be attending at your death. Rasulullah, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Fatima, Al-Hasan, Al-Hussein will all be present at your death. And that the angel of death will be an angel of mercy upon you when you remove your soul, for weeping on this night. So not only do you weep over the martyrdom of Amir al-Mu'mineen, but weep over your sins, what you have done, and how you wish to change. Do not waste this night. Don't make this another night where you attend and then tomorrow is Saturday night, everything goes back to normal. Make this night a different night. Make this a night where you stay up and you ask God for forgiveness. Stay up. Don't think, oh, maybe tomorrow I've got work. This is a night. Make up for what you've done. Because now's the time to make up for what you've done. Once it's over, this whole month finishes, everything goes back to normal. What have I done? Those that do not attain mercy in this month have nothing left but Arafah. They have nothing left but Hajj for Allah Azza wa Jal to forgive them. I ask Allah in the name of Amir al-Mu'mineen to forgive everyone that is present here tonight, and to forgive everyone that's attending any majlis for Amir al-Mu'mineen tonight. We ask Allah on this night to give forgiveness to all of Shi'at Amir al-Mu'mineen, even the ones that don't attend the majlis. May Allah have mercy upon them. May Allah help all our believing brothers and sisters that at this time where they are experiencing hardships, whether they are in prison, whether they are in war, fighting against those that have declared open enmity towards the followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to answer their du'as and grant them victory, and may Allah grant the Muslims victory in all parts of the world. وهذا والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى اللهم على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.